Hi, this is Diane Mourglia-Swerdlow wishing you a wonderful, happy Thanksgiving weekend. I have a few treats that I want to talk to you about and show you about while we have this little bit of time together to hopefully make your holidays easier and healthier and happier. Because again, you always want to remember what you put in your mind represents, you represent that by what you put in your body, and vice versa. What you put in your body is what you put in your mind. So you always want to have healthy, happy thoughts. We want to have healthy, happy food. As you're cooking, you want to be sure to infuse it with wonderful feelings and ask your oversoul to bless it and prepare it so that it can nourish your body, your mind, and your soul. So with that, I'm going to show you how to make a really wonderful recipe that I just found. Excuse me, that's my preheat button, so that's good. This is for an almond oatmeal lace cookie. So it's really easy. I use my food processor, and one of you wrote in to tell me that you actually purchased a food processor because you had watched me use mine, and I do enjoy it. This is the blade that I have and that I'm going to be using. I put this one in the bottom, and I take 1 cup. These happen to be raw organic almonds. They still have the husks on, so 1 cup of those goes into my food processor. I have 4 tablespoons of organic rolled oats, and that goes in. And we're going to pulse these to a coarse meal. We don't want to make almond butter, we're just going to coarse them. So take this up or we'll go on. Just going to make a coarse meal, so that'll take me a couple of seconds. Here we go. Check that again. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so I have a nice coarse meal. I'm just going to pour this into my mixing bowl and set this aside. Now, this is going to sit here. In the meantime, I went ahead and melted 12 tablespoons of goat butter. And into the goat butter, I am going to be putting 3/4 of a cup of the low glycemic coconut crystals, unbleached, unrefined, GMO-free, 100% organic, and along with those I have added 3 tablespoons of the raw coconut nectar. Now the recipe calls for honey, but I've decided to use this because I like the flavor, so you can do whatever you want. I kind of modify it however I feel like it at the moment. The sugar and the coconut nectar are going to go into the butter. And then we're going to stir that together until it's all melted. That's going to take you a minute or two. Now you want to remember that the coconut crystals only have 7 carbs per tablespoon. So they are much lower sugar content than you're going to be finding in a lot of your other sugars, but you want to find the mix that works best for you and the recipe. Because when I'm done with this, I'm going to stick these in to bake. They have to be turned halfway around. I'm also going to be making a pumpkin pie with you today, and for that I've decided to use my maple syrup. Now maple syrup has about 14 carbs per tablespoon, so it's a little higher glycemic index, but I'm not going to use a whole lot of it in my recipe. I want to make this a little bit hotter. I started this earlier, so let's stick this on the stove. But it's fun to experiment. I've only made this recipe once before, and as I said, I kind of adjust things to make them conducive to the way that I like to eat. And when we are done with these are really only about 5 carbs a piece. This particular recipe, depending on how big you make them, the way that I made them, they make about 36 cookies. So they're really a nice finish to a meal. And they have a little sweet bite to them, and they're kind of fancy and fun. And they're not going to overwhelm your guests, because after you've had a big holiday meal, a lot of times you don't feel like anything really heavy. Okay, you can see how this turns into a really nice, it's almost like a taffy toffee looking concoction here. That's what you want it to look like, and once you have that, then you can put this over. Well, actually, before I do that, I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of, now it calls for white flour. What I did was I took my whole rolled oats, I put it in my food processor, I turned it to flour. So I have 2 tablespoons of oat flour that I'm going to also be adding in here. And to that, then I'm going to be putting in this mixture. It's really pretty simple. As I told you before, I like to keep stuff as simple as possible for all of us. We're just going to be mixing that together. I know it's hard for you to believe that this can make about 36 cookies, but we're not going to use very much of it. And by doing so, again, we're only going to do about 5 carbs per cookie, which is nice. Now I preheated my oven to 350. I have a cookie sheet, and on my cookie sheet I put some parchment paper because this is going to run. It's going to spread. Remember, we're making a lace cookie. Now you want to have your, put on a teaspoon. I'm going to try and keep my parchment paper up here if possible. That might be a little much. But 1 to 2 teaspoons, and depending on how many teaspoons you put on, that it's going to depend on how big your cookies actually are. In fact, I'm going to take a minute and cut this parchment down just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to do, like I said, a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, depending on how big you want your cookies. You're going to have to experiment. And that's kind of the interesting thing, is when you cook, don't be too hard on yourself. It's supposed to look like this, it's supposed to look like that. You know, it is what it is. Everybody has different ingredients, you have different ways of putting things together. You know, it may make your recipe look different than what you think, and that's okay. Life, oftentimes, at least my life, has never turned out the way I thought it was going to, and that's the way your cookies are. It's still going to be sweet, and it's still going to be interesting. Your guests won't know the picture that you had in your mind. So I've got a kind of a variety of sizes, but that's okay. We're going to try them out. You see how they're already spreading a little bit. Now you can make these ahead if you have extra, because like I said, this makes about 36 cookies, and you can put it in your refrigerator just like this, because with the butter it's going to get hard. And as it gets hard, then you can go in and you can get your teaspoons and you can put them on a cookie sheet and then put them in your freezer, so that when you need them, you can pull out 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, depending upon your company or even yourself. But anyway, so it's easy to do. So let me wash my hands, and I'm going to stick this in the oven on 350. I put it in for 5 minutes, and then we're going to turn them. So, timer. Okay, so let's move this out of the way. And while that's cooking, I wanted to talk to you about making a pumpkin pie, because they're so easy to do, and what you get in the stores are so disgusting, in my personal opinion. Now, I have talked to you before about my food mill. I made applesauce with you not too long ago, and this is how I process my pumpkin. And I was going to hopefully demonstrate making the pumpkin, but we just didn't get that far this fall, so maybe next fall. But you have seen my squashes. I showed you my fairy tale pumpkin. I've shown you pie pumpkins. This pumpkin that I made actually is from a pie pumpkin. Now, this pumpkin, which I'm going to make another pumpkin pie, but not with you, later on for myself. This is from the fairy tale pumpkin. So it's a different color. You can also make pumpkin pies with sweet potatoes. You can make them with butternut squash, which I have here. And you can make it with buttercup squash, which I have here. So you can make this particular recipe with any kind of squash that you want. Now, a lot of times people don't want to deal with squashes because they're challenging to cut, and that I understand. And I hope you remember what I told you. All you have to do is take a knife and puncture it a few times. You don't put it in whole because it does have air pockets inside. It can get hot, it can explode and make a big mess in your oven. But you can puncture it with a knife several times. A pumpkin, a butternut squash, a buttercup squash, acorn squashes, any of those. You put it on a foil covered cookie sheet in your oven somewhere around 400 degrees, depending on how much fast you want it to cook. It could be 350, it could be 425, maybe even 450 if you're in a hurry. Be sure you puncture the squash. Then what happens? It gets soft while it's cooking. You can easily put a sharp knife in and out, or a toothpick, whatever you want. This peel actually will come off. You'll cut it, you'll open it up, and you'll scoop out the seeds, and then you can use the flesh. You can use the flesh in soups as well. You can run it through the food mill and make it nice with some butter, some stevia, some cinnamon. That makes a really nice accompaniment to your dinner. If you don't like sweet, you can make it savory. You can put a little butter, you can put a little basil, a little sage. Experiment with your spices, salt, pepper, whatever you like or you think you might like. So you can do that. Don't do the whole batch. Do a little bit if you're experimenting. See what you like and what you don't like. Or you can put it in the freezer if you're one person, or for another time like what I do. I put mine in the freezer and then I take it out when I need it. So here is the pumpkin pie, pie pumpkin. Gets to be a tongue twister here. This is 2 cups. Okay, into my 2 cups of the pumpkin, I'm going to add 4 eggs. And into the 4 eggs, I'm going to add my seasoning. I have 2 tablespoons of organic cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, a little less than a half a teaspoon of cloves, ground cloves, and about a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt. So that's all going in there for my spices. Now I also am going to show, I have shown you before, my coconut milk. Now the coconut milk, this particular kind, has 0 carbs, so it makes it very low carb. You want to shake that up. This recipe calls for 1.5 cups of liquid. And you can use whatever you like. You can use canned milk, you can use goat milk. Because this is low carb, and I enjoy the flavor it gives. So 1.5 cups goes in. And the last ingredient I told you earlier, I'm going to use some of my maple syrup. So this recipe actually calls for 1.5 cups. I'm only going to use 1/2 cup. So it makes it extremely low carb. Okay, and that goes in. Now if you want, you can also add a little stevia. We don't use a lot of sugar, so what some people might not taste very sweet, to us is really adequate. So again, you know, think about your own palate. If you're used to 1.5 cups, you may want to cut down to 1 cup or 3/4 cup. Now, as you can see, this is very liquidy. And in a way, I kind of call it like a pumpkin quiche. I think it's very nutritious. It's eggs, it's squash, it's got a little bit of sweetener, and it's got your spices. That's it. I do not make mine with a crust because the crust is full of carbs. So, and it's really not that healthy for me. I use a 9x12 pan for this particular recipe, and I'm also going to use my hand mixer to blend it because that's what's going to give it a nice smooth texture. Very, very easy to make. So there's my timer for my lace cookies. Let's take a look and see how those are doing. You can see they haven't spread out a lot, but you're going to be surprised what you see the next time we take them out of the oven. So I'm going to turn them and put them in for another 5 minutes. Okay, and in the meantime, get out my hand mixer and blend this together. can see what a lovely pumpkin pie mix that makes. I'm going to pour it into our 9 by 12 pan. And this will set up into a very nice pumpkin type custard. You can serve this with whipped cream. As I said, if you want to put a crust on the bottom, there are a variety of different ways that you can even make low carb crusts. You can do butter with coconut, unsweetened coconut in there. You can do a nut type of a crust where you just grind your nuts up, make them coarse with a little bit of butter. You can add sweetener if you want. You can use graham crackers if you want, gluten-free preferably. And we're just going to spread that out. And really the main carbs in here are sugar. So we have a half a cup. It's roughly around 100 carbs of sugar. The pumpkin, however, is very low in carbs. And that is going to be roughly, with 2 cups of pumpkin, let's say 20 carbs. So you've got about 120 carbs. So I'm going to cut it maybe into 4 by 6 pieces or 3 by 6, so 24, 18. You know, you're maybe going to have tops around 10 carbs per piece. So it's very nice, and a lot of it is very good for you. Get eggs and pumpkin or squash, so it's easy. And just a second, I'm going to tell you what temperature to bake that at. I have to check my recipe before I start. Check my box for you. It is 425 for the first 15 minutes. Then you want to go down to 350 for another 40 or 45 minutes. And the way you test it is you just take a toothpick or a knife, and when it comes out clean, it's done. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer to cook because I like mine really well set. Some people don't like it, but again, even this is good for breakfast. It's squash, it's eggs, it's good for you. So don't go buy your pumpkin pie at the store. Make it yourself, you can do it. So I'm going to set that aside, and our lace cookies are going to be out in just a second, and I want to have a place to put them. So I want to show you how easy that these are. Okay, they're good. Alright, now do you see how they all ran together? That is why you want to have plenty of space on your sheet, and why I didn't do too many at once. So what you do if that happens is you just take your knife and you can cut them apart. Now these are going to harden really fast, and so you can serve them one of 2 ways. Eventually, as soon as they get hard, we're going to be able to peel them off of this parchment paper. And you can serve them flat, or if you're really quick, sometimes you can actually roll them. And then you have a rolled cookie that at some point you may want to fill. So they will continue to bake. They're hot. I'm going to kind of slip them off over here. That's one reason why I left them. And I'm going to see what's going to happen, what I can and cannot do. They're starting to set. Let's give them a minute. Okay, this one's starting. So you can see now I can take it off like this. It's going to make a really nice cookie because it's still soft. I can roll it and set it aside. Okay, this one's just getting to that point. If it gets too hard, it's going to break. If it's too soft, it's going to collapse. So that's why I said you can't really be too hard on yourself while you're cooking. You kind of take stuff as it comes. And the really nice thing is, because it's homemade, not everything is going to look alike. If you want everything to look alike and be perfect, you know, get something from the store. But if you want lovely homemade things, you're going to have some uniqueness because you're unique and your guests are unique. So here we go, rolling them up. Now another thing you can do, which is really nice if you have the time and the inclination, is you can take some of those 85% green and black organic chocolate bars. You can melt some chocolate and you can dip some of the ends in. These will get hard, then you can dip the ends in. They're lace cookies, which means they will fall apart. So you can serve them like that. You can serve them like this. It's up to you. These are so nice and soft. I'm going to keep rolling mine. There. There's a good one for you. And there's another one. And then as they harden, these are going to maybe start breaking a little bit. Anyway, so it's fun. It depends on what you want to fool with. And don't get frustrated. It's easy to get frustrated in cooking if things don't turn out the way you have in your mind. Nobody knows what's in your mind but you, as far as your guests know. So there you go. A nice, fun holiday cookie, low carb. These are about 5 carbs a piece. They're going to collapse because they were a little bit soft when I did them, but that's all right. Let's see. See how they go. Alrighty. So I have one last thing I want to show you that's going to be really quick. So let me wash my hands one more time. Now, all of you, of course, remember Cindy, our organic farmer. She has popcorn that she sells that is mold-free. And I have some here in my box. And what we do is we just take the kernels off. She was telling me that people take this and put it in the microwave and pop it. Well, of course, microwave changed the cellular structure. We don't use a microwave. We don't own a microwave. Even sitting in your home, it emits waves that you don't want to have to deal with. Let's put it that way. So, it came to my attention that not everybody may know how to pop corn on top of a stove. So this is something very simple that I just want to share with you. You know, air poppers came out, and that's what I have, and that's what I started using with her popcorn. But the air popper made so many of the kernels come out that I lost so much, and I don't want to lose her popcorn. It's too precious for me. So if you don't know how to pop popcorn on top of the stove, take your pan with a well-fitting lid, and this is nice because it's glass. You're going to be able to see. You turn it on high, and you put in about 2 to 3 tablespoons. I use olive oil. I know people who use coconut oil. You could use butter, but for me, olive oil is my oil of preference. So you put that on, you turn your burner on high, and then you take your kernels, and I usually put in 5 or 6. And you want to make, then you put the lid on, you seal it up, and you want to make it wait until it's hot enough to pop. So these are going to start popping. You don't want to put this in and go off and leave it because your oil will burn and you could start a fire. So you want to remember the kitchen is the most dangerous place in the house outside of the bathroom, and they may be tied at this point. So do not put your kernels in and go off and do something. It's too easy to get distracted. I don't care if it's get the mail, get the newspaper, use the bathroom. Wait and watch your kernels, even though it seems like a long time. When these get hot, when your oil is hot enough, they will start popping. And then you put in, and I don't do very much at a time. You can use a bigger pan, but I'd rather do 2 or 3 batches. So this is about 3 tablespoons of corn. And we have a couple in here that we didn't quite finish taking it off of. And when we were in El Salvador, they were telling us how that they save the cobs and they use it for fuel. So we've actually saved the cobs, and we're going to put that in our fire when we make our next fire pit. So try not to waste anything if we don't have to. And it's going to take us a minute. Looks like I dropped a kernel there. Put it in there, but it's really easy to do. So, you know, if you're used to Jiffy Pop, you know, let's move along. Let's get something that's better for you and do your own. If you have an air popper and you're like me, you're tired of wasting so many kernels, you can do it on top of the stove. And I know at one point they went to promoting air poppers because they were talking about that oil was bad for you, but you know by now that you need at least 2 tablespoons of healthy fat every day. You need that for your cellular integrity, for your nervous system, for your brain to function properly. So don't let them take away your fat. Put fat back into your diet. And when I'm done, then I put goat butter on it. You put a little sea salt on it. You can put things like Parmesan cheese, your favorite seasonings. Again, if you want savory, you can do things like basil and oregano, Italian type seasonings, parsley, cilantro. You know, choose whatever you like. And again, the Parmesan cheese, your grated cheeses. If you like sweet, you can put a little stevia, you can put a little cinnamon on. You can drizzle a little of the coconut nectar that we just saw on. You can drizzle a little sorghum or molasses or honey. So, you know, whatever you want, you can create that for yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. Allow yourself to have some creative flow. It's not supposed to be this way or that way. It's whatever it is. It's your life. Whatever it turns out, make it into something good and positive for yourself. So here we go. We're starting to pop in there. You can see it takes a couple of minutes to get it going, so you have to be patient. And that's why there's that temptation to run off. Don't do it. Stay. It's even going to start to smoke in there a little bit because it's hot. I've got my burner on high. And these are not as big as, I don't know what the brands are these days, but they are telling you about how big your kernels pop up. Well, these are smaller. These will definitely be smaller, but they're better. And I've really been enjoying her popcorn. You want to shake it a little as needed, but you want that oil in the bottom covering your seeds, and there it goes. It doesn't take long once it gets started. Now there's popcorn pop. You want to remember there's moisture inside, and when it gets hot, the moisture explodes and opens up. You can also do this with wild rice, which I have done it without nice success, but my understanding is the indigenous peoples used to eat it that way and carry it with them as a snack, so like a puffed rice. So you might want to try it if you're really inventive. I've never had a lot of luck with that, but it's kind of a fun thing to do. Alrighty, I think that's about what we're going to get out of our 3 tablespoons. Alright, so you can see what a beautiful batch of popcorn we have. I'm going to, again, for me, I just like a little goat butter and a little bit of sea salt. But it's really nice. It's hot, of course. It's right out of the pan. But you can do it. It's easy. So anyway, have fun with your cooking. Have fun with your holiday entertainment, whatever that happens to be. Entertain yourself. Entertain your guests. Entertain your friends. Cook extra. Put it in your freezer. Try and make life easy for yourself. Try not to stress. I'm going to give you a few more holiday tips as we move through this holiday season through November and December, and I hope you can use some of them. Please be sure and sign up on the Royal Blue forums. They're free. Please be sure and get the e-newsletter. There are always interesting things loaded with tips that will help you get through the holidays easier than you might imagine. And remember, January is coming up soon. If you want that really intense immersion into hyperspace oversoul techniques, we have our training, our week-long training program coming up. We'd love to have you join us. We have so many wonderful things planned at expansions.com in 2012. We know you're going to be so happy and so thrilled. We are so happy again to give to you, and we appreciate it very much when you give back by supporting us with your memberships, specifically at this point. We're doing our membership drive. So happy Thanksgiving to all. I will be back and speak with you again very, very soon. Take care.